Howdy, everyone, and welcome to the Okayest Trapper Podcast. I'm your host, Zach Hanson, an author, outdoorsman, and the world's okayest trapper. In each of our episodes, we sit down with trapping royalty to get an inside view into what it takes to put steel on the ground, get tight chains, and put up fur. Whether you're a newbie or a grizzled vet, at the end of each episode, I'll wager that you'll walk away with some new techniques to apply to your trade. And as always, we take our content seriously, but not ourselves. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming our first guest, me. Yes, surprise, surprise, for our first episode, you get to buckle in for a short monologue all about how I got into trapping and what this podcast is all about. You see, as most great things in life, it all started with a traumatic event, a divorce. And to cope with that fallout as a young man in his early 30s, I headed west. And with my only experience in hunting and trapping being anecdotes I picked up from watching Jeremiah Johnson 100 times, I was in for a rude awakening. And after a few years being all in on the mountain man lifestyle, the one art that has managed to capture my heart and reignite my creativity is trapping. So much so, I even wrote a book about it called Turning Feral, which details my many failures in learning to trap. But with the openness around learning things the hard way that I share in my book, it has opened many doors to get to learn from some of the best in the industry, and those trapping mentors will be featured guests on this show. For each guest, I'll be running them through a series of questions that will build like a crescendo and leave listeners pining for the okayest answer that bookends each podcast. Questions will include asking guests about their background and what or who introduced them to trapping. What has been their preferred animal to target over the years? What's the biggest mistakes they made as a new trapper? What's the scariest or most bizarre experience they've had in the woods on a trap line? Who is their most looked up to trapping icon, dead or alive? What's the biggest mistake they have ever made in putting up fur? And finally, what's the okayest moment they have ever had while trapping? Each episode will have some latitude to explore outside of those questions depending on the guest's background and interest areas. But the hope is to be hard-hitting and to the point and keep each episode to 45 minutes or less. I look forward to getting started, sharing some of my continued trapping follies, learning to suck a little less with each guest's shared knowledge, and letting people know that being the okayest trapper ain't that bad. Till next time.